Hey guys, I'm your host Olivia and you're listening to another episode of BCT. We are a Christian podcast that enables you guys to hear people from all different backgrounds sharing their testimonies and their stories. Follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Today I'm joined by Pete. Hi Pete.
Hello, thanks
How
for
are
having
you?
me on.
Oh, I'm so glad you could come on.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Good. How's your day been so far?
So far it's good. We've just had the Good Friday service, which was very enjoyable, and
As much as it can be.
yeah. Well, my son Matthew was a bit like, "Can we go home now?" It's like,
Oh,
no,
bless him.
but no, it was good. Yeah. And so
Good.
yeah, just eagerly anticipating Easter.
Yeah, and the sun's shining.
Yeah, finally,
it's
an
like-
unironic finally.
I know, because it was shining this morning, and then when church ended, it was like tipping down. But now it looks nice now. So.
Yeah, it's nice and bright in here.
But I mean, how can you plan something when the weather's like this, isn't it? So
It's totally
yeah.
unpredictable. Changes from 1 minute to the next.
I know.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me about your hobbies, your likes, and your family then.
Well, I suppose I should start with my family. Most people know me as Beth's husband. And so if ever Beth's away or, unwell and doesn't come to church, I'll come in with Matthew and everyone says, "Hello, Matthew," and then looks at me and says, "Where's Beth?" So I'm Beth's husband. And I'm a motion graphic designer, which is kind of like an animator, except it's more like doing TV ads and like the prices that might appear in an ad or a social media post than kind of like Disney style character animation.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love my job. But just before we were recording, I was saying it feels like a hobby, and it's because like I'd be doing it anyway. If I couldn't make a living at it, I'd end up doing it anyway. So yeah, cool. I feel really blessed that I get to do it like as my work.
Yeah, definitely. No, obviously I'm growing up now and like trying to figure out what I want to do in my life, and everyone's just saying just do something that you enjoy, do something happy that like you don't feel like you're stuck in a job. And obviously you've proven that.
Yeah, definitely, because I think to be really good at anything you have to do it an insane amount, and you want to be thinking about it all, like kind of almost all of the time. And if you're doing a job you don't like, if you're good and you're thinking about it all the time, you might be miserable, but also like you probably won't care enough to be really good, and that like seems like a waste.
Yeah, definitely. So what about your childhood then? What did that look like?
So my mum and dad are both Christian, so I had a fairly typical like Christian upbringing, like Bible stories at bedtime, church every Sunday and at Christmas and Easter. Always had like a secure, safe home. I've got 2 sisters and a brother, so I'm the youngest. So I had loads of people like looking after me. Nice. Relatively big family, I guess. But yeah, like obviously there's the odd thing that was upsetting when I was a child, but like by and large it was really, really like happy, and I had a really nice childhood.
Good.
So I was really lucky, yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, let's go straight into then. I'd love to hear when you accepted Jesus into your life.
Okay, so this is something that's like interesting to me, because you often hear about people that are saved and they've come from maybe difficult circumstances, but I was raised like with Christian values, so it wasn't certain Christian values weren't like a radical idea to me, nor was the idea of there being order to the universe, or like the universe having been created, or the idea of people going to heaven when they died. That that was all kind of normal. That didn't feel hard to get my head around. But I do remember like the specific point where I was going to like a youth club. I must have been about 15. It was obviously back in London, and there was one evening where I decided like for myself that I wanted to give my life to Jesus. And it's funny, I remember thinking, like that first moment when you do, and you've got like, it's like so crystal clear that it's, that he is the way. I remember thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could just die now? I'd go straight to heaven, I wouldn't have to suffer. And it's almost like I heard God immediately say, like, no, there's so much more I want you to do. That's crazy. But yeah, so it was then. So yeah, I was 15, I think.
Cool.
Maybe a bit younger, but yeah, it's hard to remember.
So obviously, like you had this Christian background, but did you feel like, oh, there's a pressure to become a Christian because you grew up with Christian parents, or did you feel like, nah, choosing my own faith was pretty easy?
I don't think I felt pressure. I think my parents were very like sort of on it about making sure like I went to church as far as they could be, but they never, like as I got older, they never forced me to go, and like we've all got like varying degrees of like faith, I would say. So like I'm sure like one of my sisters isn't a Christian, and my parents aren't like, they don't give her a hard time about it. They know that it's all of our decisions. So I could have totally walked away. I wasn't forced into it or anything, if that makes sense. And you know, as a kid, I definitely asked like awkward questions, like how do you know this is true? How do you know it's not just a story someone's made up and put in a book? And they were never stern about that. They were always you know, encouraging. And like my dad's a scientist, and we'd talk a lot about, you know, how does like the creation story fit into the, you know, like archaeological evidence and like, you know, evidence that the Earth's a lot older than that, and like how do you square those, and like what's his opinion of that? And so I feel like I had a, you know, I was allowed to critique it. I wasn't just like, no, you know, clip round the ear, shut up, listen, you sinner, or anything like that. So it was good. It was encouraging.
Yeah, that's really important. So I have been told anyway that you became a little bit distant from God, and I guess distant from your faith and your relationship with him. So did you find it hard to come back from that and continue to grow your relationship with him?
Yeah, I'll give you a bit of backstory, if that's okay. Yeah. So basically, my distance from God was a kind of slow decline, which started by not going to church every week. And I think if you are caught up with things, if you're busy with things, you might ask yourself, do I need to go to church every week? Obviously, you don't need to go to church every week to earn your salvation. Like, that's dealt with. But I experience like the kind of like the bad thing that does happen when you don't go, which is just I began to doubt more and more. And it got to the point I didn't really notice until like it was such a slow decline. I almost didn't notice. And then Beth's mum passed away a few years ago, and I just thought to myself, like, I just can't believe that she's in heaven looking down on us. It just doesn't seem to be true. I wanted to believe it, and I wanted I wanted to believe that, you know, everything's okay, but I just didn't. And I kind of found the atheist view of death kind of fascinating in a morbid way. Of like, okay, there's nothing when you die. You know, you are your brain, so when your brain dies, that's just, you're destroyed. And like, you know, after death is the nothingness, is like the nothingness from before you were born. You know, and it's just, you know, so I dwelt on that, and I sort of began to think, oh my goodness, I think that is what is true. But then I also had this kind of like cognitive dissonance of like I would argue for the existence of God, and I would say I was a Christian, and you know, I got roped into like arguments online or at work or something, and I'd be like, no, God, it's like the most logical thing for there to be a creator. And then when I really sat down and thought about it, I thought, but I just can't believe that when you die you kind of wake up in heaven. That doesn't seem true. And we went through like this really uncertain time of not knowing where we were going to live, and I remember praying, like, God, I need a miracle. Buying a house in London is impossible. And then after that, like, things did begin to fall into place. We decided to move to Wales. Like, we found a house, and then I was thinking, because I was still working in London, I was thinking, I just need a job so we can go and live in our house. You know, I'll take anything. And then what I actually got was a job that was quite good career progression. And then I sort of decided I knew that I wanted to go back to church, and so we asked a neighbour who had been really helpful when we moved, are there any churches in the area? And he recommended Baglan, and it was after a couple of weeks I came and I thought, this is all true, isn't it? And then it was like, again, I heard Jesus say, yes, of course it is. and then it was like, so it wasn't hard to come back. It wasn't like I'd fallen off the rails and like, you know, become like a drug addict. It just was a slow kind of, I think, like, if you spend time away from church and away from Christians, like, people are constantly chipping away at you, aren't they? They're constantly saying, well, you can't believe that. You can't believe that, you know, like, it's hard to think of an example on the spot now, but you can't possibly think that, you know, people shouldn't have the right to abortion. Like, how can you be so unprogressive? And you think, well, you're a nice person, so maybe you're right, or whatever. So I think it was just, I needed to come back to church and be with Christians and kind of have the message refreshed. Does that answer the question? So that was a bit of a ramble. No, completely. Because the world is so tempting as well, isn't it? Like, the world is crazy. How
how it can change your opinion on things, your view on things. Like, it's crazy if you're too much of the world and not, you know, with God and stuff.
And that's exactly what happened. And I worked with and had lots of like nice friends that weren't saved, and it was kind of much easier to convince myself that maybe a bit of the Bible's true, but not all of it. And the bit that says that like you need Jesus, that's mainly true, but there'll be something else for everyone else or something. And that was a much more comforting thought than actually what now I believe to be true, which is that you need Jesus. So yeah, I think it was just like a slow decline, and then, you know, but God was working. He wasn't going to let me go.
Yeah, he's got hold of you. No leaving now.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. So obviously quite recently you faced this big obstacle that could have completely ruined your relationship with God, and I guess you could have been like, why is this happening to me, God? Because you've, I guess, lost your job.
Yeah, I was made redundant about 6 weeks ago. Yeah, and so that was like a test, and you know, we've been learning in house group and at church all about, you know, God should be your foundation. And I thought, okay, so this is the time to put that into practice, because it's easy to say that and really want to believe it. Yeah. But then it's like, okay, so here's the test. So I thought, well, if I know that I'm safe because I've got God in my life, not because of the illusion of safety that a job brings, what do I do? So the first thing that happened was, you know, I think after I got the email saying I was going to be made redundant, I had to go out and get a shop or something. I had to go and do a click and collect, something really mundane. But I remember driving and praying, and just the first thing I said was, I prayed was like, thank you for my job, you know, the job I've lost. Thank you, because it was really great, and I had a really, really good time there. It enabled like my family to move to Wales and to actually live in our house and everything, and I had a lot of fun. So I felt like I wanted to show gratitude. And then I just thought, you know, I'll be patient and see what's next. And I knew that like the kind of more practical stuff was taken care of. Like I had some savings, so I knew we weren't immediately about to lose the house or anything, thankfully. And then it felt like God was at work immediately. And I thought, oh, this might be really hard. And like Neil, like your dad even said to me, like, you know, things might be really difficult, and I just, even when he was saying it to me, I remember thinking, I don't think it will be. And I don't want to say it, because then, like, you know, in 6 months, if I'd have been out of work still and like been really poor and everything, like I might have struggled. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like God was doing things straight away. Like I had an absolute outpouring of support from everyone at the church. Like someone even came, I won't name them, but someone even came forward and offered to pay some bills and stuff. And I said, like, thank you so much, but that's like really, it's not needed, thankfully. And then I'd kind of, you know, for ages I've been thinking about maybe I should try freelancing, and I've always stopped myself because I think, no, I could never walk away from the security of a monthly paycheck. And suddenly that decision was made for me, and I was like, maybe I should try that. And then almost as soon as I decided to, like, I'd gone to London to see family, and it was the Saturday I decided maybe I'll try it. On the Monday, I had 3 projects land in my inbox that kept me going, that were like 3 months worth of income. And that gave me the confidence to. And then also there's someone who I've been working for on a freelance basis, and she basically laid everything out practically for me. So I had, you know, a million boring questions about like insurance and do you register a company, and she basically answered all of those in a stroke. And yeah, I've just kind of been doing that. I've been doing that since, and it's going really well. And people are, you know, I see people on LinkedIn lamenting the lack of work that's out there, and I think, well, I feel really blessed because I'm not really busy. Someone at house group says, "Oh, you're a millionaire yet?" I'm like, no, it's not like that. It's not like that. It's just paying my salary basically. But it's like, it's amazing that it is. And I never would have done this myself. And I did feel like, in hindsight, it's almost like God kind of went, "You're never going to do this, but this is what you need to do. So I'm just going to push you to do it." And like, you know, sometimes, you know, people often say, you know, you kind of forget how good God is. And so like, when we were moving to Wales, I knew I needed to find a job before we had to move out of our old house. I knew there was a deadline, and God provided a job way before the deadline. So it's like he knows that he knows that I'll crumble. And it's like with this, I thought, well, I've got some savings, and I knew I was going to use those to kind of tide me through a job search. So if I have to use those to build up a client base for freelancing, fair enough. And I've not even needed to do that. I've been incredibly blessed. Like, it's uncanny. And like, there are a load of other people that were laid off at the same time as me. And, I said to one of them, like, oh, have you tried praying? Like, what have you got to lose? And he just kind of ignored it. But like, they've really struggled. And I think even if I hadn't have found work, having kind of a solid foundation, knowing that, well, I will be okay ultimately. Like, there is a plan. I've not been abandoned. I think that gives you confidence to do things and to make bold moves and things. Yeah,
definitely. God is good, isn't he?
Yes.
He is good all the time. Not just when you need him. He is good all the time.
Yeah, and then, sorry, there's just one other thing as well about like testing faith. About 2 weeks after I'd lost my job, Beth had a bit of a health scare, and I'm not going to go into detail because it's relatively private. But I remember thinking then, oh, this could be like, I'm being a bit battered here, and this could be like, it wouldn't be unreasonable to doubt the existence of God now. And I just kind of thought, now you'd have to kill me for me to stop worshipping God at this point. Like, I'm not going to like bring it on, like whatever's happening. And and now my dad's suffering with his health, and so it's it's not like you can. I don't believe in like prosperity gospel. Like, you still have like, it still rains when you're a Christian, right? But you kind of that ultimately things are okay.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think we should all be like that, if only. Okay, before we end then, is there anything you would like to especially say to anyone who might be listening?
I just, if you're not a Christian, I think it can be easy to think, like, I can't go to church because, and then insert reason, like, I've done a terrible thing, I've got some horrible addiction, it's not really for me, I'm not, I'm turned off by religion, or whatever, and my advice would be to go anyway and just ask questions about people that are there. Don't be afraid to ask the awkward questions, the things you think, wow, I've really got a trump card, it would almost be rude to put a Christian on the spot. Go and ask those, because like that they all have answers. And like, I think people would be surprised. So I think that's it.
Yeah, good advice. I hope people listen to that.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on, Pete. I've loved chatting to you. It's been very good.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, I'm glad you could come. Right, thank you guys for listening to another episode of BCT. Let us know what you thought of this episode and what you would like to hear us discuss and talk about more in further episodes. You can follow us on all the social media platforms and listen to us on any social media platform to keep up with any updates. Bye for now.